Our first guest today, Richard Warwick, is one of the survivors speaking out in the new documentary.
After being treated for haemophilia as a child, a disorder where the blood can't clot, Richard was administered contaminated blood products, and as a result, he contracted HIV as well as hepatitis B and C. And he joins us now this morning. Richard, thank you for coming in. It's an extraordinary documentary. I mean, it really is searingly painfully honest in many ways for the reality of what you and those other people that contracted all these, used with the infected blood, had on you is just devastating. Let's start with your diagnosis. So you were diagnosed as haemophilia as a child.
Yes, I was born with haemophilia. It's a hereditary condition. I was diagnosed at the age of about 3 years old.
What was the impact of that on your childhood?
It was very difficult for my parents because there was a lot of concern, particularly among social workers, that I was having these large lumps and bumps all over my body. They didn't know what it was, so they got involved. And it wasn't really until I was like 3.5, 4, that I actually got finally a diagnosis in Hull. So this little lad's got haemophilia. Spending a lot of time in hospital, losing an enormous amount of schooling. So between sat at home on the sofa, watching other kids play outside, and being stuck in hospital in plaster cast splints and traction, you know, something had to change.
You just weren't living life, were you?
Exactly.
Sort of existing.
Yeah.
So then when the offer came to go to Treloar's college, which was, by all intents and purposes, and he's called in the documentary like almost like a Harry Potter-style college, where there was loads of space outside, there was loads of opportunity for you, and you could be treated at the same time.
That was the point of it, really.
Yeah.
It seemed too good to be true, and it was 300 miles away. But what it did have going for it is that I would get on-site care and also world-class education. And although it was a huge wrench for my parents to send me that far away from home, they, at the time, thought it was the best thing to do. I mean, the glossy brochures that they got, talking about the pros of the school, it was really a no-brainer, so they opted for sending me down there. What we know now, that my parents nor I didn't know at the time, was it was actually a ruse to get as many haemophiliac young boys from the ages of 8 and upwards into one place so that they could be used for secret medical trials. And we really only found out, I would say, 2 years into me being down there, that something was seriously wrong, because we were going around in groups, 5 or 6 boys with yellow eyes, jaundiced, ill. So we knew something was amiss.
And that was after a certain amount of time, because you were having a lovely time being there at the school, and, you know, when you watch the documentary, that's what you get. You get this bond between you all.
You do, yeah.
But then you were being treated, and gradually more and more boys were getting sick. They thought sometimes it was glandular fever, but that wasn't a thing either.
No.
Well, how was this explained to you? And was it just hidden under the carpet and nothing was spoken about to your parents?
It wasn't explained to us, that's the thing.
Right.
As far as the hepatitis B goes, and the yellow skin and eyes, we were told essentially it was just a side effect of the treatment. What upset us the most is that we were being segregated at meal times. We were being put on separate tables, the cutlery, the plates all marked.
They had orange or yellow marks, didn't they?
Red stickers on them. And we just looked at each other, bemused. But as children, as little kids, you know, you tend to shrug these things off.
Of course.
I think when we all started to go down with glandular fever, which I think colloquially is called, or known as the kissing disease.
Yeah,
I mean, none of us were in relationships at the age of 12.
No, you were lads.
But that was a precursor, as we now know through medical evidence, of early HIV. And we're talking about 1978 here.
Yeah.
Long before the AIDS crisis.
Of course. There was headlines, wasn't there? The killer blood headlines started to circulate. They were on some of the newspapers.
In the Daily Mail.
In the Daily Mail. And suddenly people started talking about what was happening. And they tried to keep some of those headlines and the newspapers from some of your classmates, didn't they?
Absolutely. Basically, they rifled through the library, the school library, and took away all the newspapers mentioning and referencing the link between haemophilia and HIV/AIDS.
Because they were scared about you all starting to piece things together.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
So when were you actually told about this? Because in the documentary, there is a moment where somebody explains the situation, and you're all in a room, and there's a doctor, and he goes, "You've got it, you haven't. You've got it, you have." When did you find out? And when did they tell your parents?
I found out personally in what would be about 3.5 years after I was diagnosed. I was tested for HIV in December 1984. Wasn't told the results. And it was my GP. I developed epilepsy. As a side note, I developed epilepsy as a result of the HIV infection. And I was going for a checkup, routine checkup with my GP to say, how are you getting on with your meds and so on and so forth. And he turned around to me and said, just before I left, he said, "Richard, you do know you're HIV positive, don't you?" And I blankly stared at him, and I said, "I didn't."
What year was that, Richard?
That would be 1980, I would say October 1987. So I walked home to see my girlfriend. We were living at her mum and dad's house at the time. It was a wet, cold, dark night. It was raining, and I just walked home with my head down, and I said, "Tina, we've got to go upstairs and we've got to talk. I've got something to tell you." And we just hugged each other and cried and talked, you know. And then things got, after that, there was another problem.
Just devastating for you as a couple as well, because you wanted to have children.
Yes,
and the diagnosis of HIV in the sort of mid to late 80s was devastating, wasn't it? It wasn't like it is now, where we know that you can live with it and there's things you can do. Back then it was, you know, this is terminal.
The prognosis was, if you contracted HIV and it was untreated, there was no treatment available at the time, the prognosis was a lifespan of about 18 months to 2 years.
Gosh.
So we were in between the point at which I had HIV and there was no treatment. So in late 1991, AZT came onto the market, which was a real game changer. But at the time, there was no treatment. So I'd been given this prognosis. We had one of those things that happens in life, an accident between us. Tina became pregnant, the morning sickness and such like, so she knew what was going on. Went to the GP, her doctor, and he said to her, "It's in your best interest and the interest of the child that you terminate this pregnancy." We had two options to think about. Either the child is born and it's OK, and I die 2 years later, so the child grows up without a dad, or the child is born with HIV itself, or a mixture of both. So at the time, it seemed the obvious choice to make, but sadly, it was Tina's last chance to have children. So consequently, we haven't been able to start a family.
And Richard, it's affected your life in every way, emotionally, mentally, work, insurance, every single way, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. I mean, it's prevented me from leading a normal, productive life. You know, being able to provide for a family, which I've never had. But that aside, it means that I haven't been able to contribute to society in the way that I wanted to do. I did really well at school on the technical sciences and with computing and so on and so forth. So those are the ambitions I had for the future, but all that's been taken away from me. And it's just been a constant roller coaster of infections, bleeds, disability, pain. I would say the first 10 years of my life was just pain, anguish, pain, anguish, pain, anguish. And then going to a school and meeting people that were in your own situation with haemophilia was amazing. We had this freedom. We were able to talk about amongst ourselves about our problems.
Connection and community.
And the connection and the community was fantastic. But as we later found out, there was something far sinister behind it.
You've been campaigning for years for answers. Of course, we've had the inquiry. And we're now in a situation where you're campaigning for compensation to actually be delivered. Where are you with the compensation part of that?
I haven't had any compensation yet. So we just plod on and plod on and plod on.
Because in the report, the doctor actually said it's a distressing catalogue of failures. I mean, they could have even heat-treated the factor VIII and got rid of all those viruses, but that was... You were let down time after time after time.
Yeah, it's beyond belief, really. You couldn't make it up. No. You couldn't write a book about it. They ignored the warnings. They gave us this wonder drug, as it was called at the time. You know, this was going to revolutionise our lives.
But they were just experimenting on us.
They were just experimenting on us.
It's so sinister, as you say. Treloar's College said, "We sincerely apologise to former students and families who were so devastatingly affected by the infected blood scandal. The treatments by clinicians of pupils at Treloar's in the 70s and 80s was unethical and wrong. A public memorial dedicated to former Treloar pupils is an important recommendation of the inquiry's report, and we are fully committed to ensuring all those impacted by Treloar's are remembered." With regards to the compensation, the Infected Blood Compensation Authority, they say our priority is to pay many people as soon as possible. We aim to start on average 100 claims a week, expecting all living infected individuals registered with support schemes to begin their claims by the end of 2025, so that's the end of this year. We're recruiting up to 500 claim managers and planning to add around 80 monthly from late June to increase the number of claims we can process. Is that enough, do you think, Richard?
We can only keep our fingers crossed and hope that it is. You know, people are dying at an average rate of two a week now. That's gone up. We just hope they get a crack on and start processing more claims, because people are dying. It's wrong, it's unfair. This should all have been sorted out and started 2 years ago, not 6 months ago.
And what about that public memorial?
Right. We, as a group who feature in the documentary this evening, would like a prominent memorial to recognise the lives and deaths of the 80 boys that we lost at the school. That's really, really important to us, and one of the reasons we went ahead and did the documentary. We want recognition for those boys and the families of those boys to remember them. They can't speak for themselves anymore. We can.
Which is the least you deserve. Absolutely. And it sounds like Treloar's College are very keen to make sure they're fully committed to that happens. So the sooner that happens, the better. The British blood scandal poisoned at school is on tonight at 9 p.m. on ITV1 and ITVX. Thank you for coming in and being so eloquent. And fingers crossed you get that compensation up and running and sorted as soon as possible.
Thank you, Ben.
Oh, hello. Thank you for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. We upload tons of new content every single day. So hit the subscribe button, like all the videos, and don't miss out. We'll see you in the morning.